Well, hey YouTube, it's Elvis Ammo here. Hey, today we're going to take what we learned in the last video on the video where we used the temperature settings on the PID as a guide, or the temperature settings on the PID as a scale to verify what our dial setting is on our Lee pot. So now we're going to use that information to find out how hot is our pot. We have the PID controller telling us what temperature the pot is. I just finished filling this pot up and fluxing it, and the Lee pot is plugged directly into a power source and not into the PID controller. The PID controller is only telling us what the temperature is of the pot. So we're not going to control the pot with the PID controller. We are only going to run the pot just like you would if you don't have a PID controller or any way to tell the temperature. But in this case, we can see what the temperature is, and we are going to run this whole pot of lead just like we did in the last video to find out what a guide would be for our settings on the pot using the PID controller. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to run this whole pot of lead, casting bullets, and we're going to try to set our dial on our pot and see where the optimum setting is on the pot. If you didn't have a PID controller, this will be very helpful in knowing where to set your pot at. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start by turning this pot down. Right now, it has the pot is kind of coming on and off, and this is where I normally run my lead. Alright, I have the dial set between 6 and 7. I'm going to turn it down a little bit more to where I usually end up. Okay, it just turned off. So I'm assuming that the temperature that I would normally run it is around 9 instead of the optimum temperature that we think is optimum of 745 or 750, in that area. So already this PID has informed me that I've been running my lead hotter than I thought, and this is going to be very informative to many of you as well. So I'm going to start casting some lead, and I'm going to find out where this pot stops, where the I'm going to let it sit here for another 10 minutes or so, and I'll bring you back and we'll just see. Right now it is going on and off on its own, and let's just see at 6.5, at 6.5 on the dial. Let's see where this temperature holds at. So I'll bring you back and we'll just see if it's still at 919, and then we will start turning it down to where we have learned in the last video that the PID controller set the pot. So if you didn't see that video, it's going to be very interesting to you to see that. Alright, so now I have cast, remember it was on 919, and I went ahead and turned it down to exactly 6.5 on this dial. Remember, we are not controlling the temperature with the PID. It's only giving us a reading of what the temperature is. The pot is not plugged into the PID. It's plugged into a direct power source, and the PID is plugged in separately to another power source so that we can tell the temperature. Now I've cast about 100 bullets since it was sitting at 919 up here, and the temperature has kind of settled in around 880. I've noticed this 870, 880 is kind of where it's kind of sticking. Now it don't stay within the temperature when you're controlling it with the PID, but I'm surprised to see that this pot is turning on and off. It just turned off. Alright, so you'll hear it kick back on in a minute. Let's see, it just turned off. Temperature is dropping a little bit. I'm surprised to see it just kick back on again. Okay, and this is not controlled by the PID, and now it went off again. So this thing is actually doing way better than I thought it would. I mean, it just come back on. I'm very surprised that this temperature is staying, it just turned off, staying so stable without it being controlled by the PID controller. Now this is where, you know, for personal reasons, this is where I run my pot. So I've been running my pot around 875 or so, but we're going to see what happens as the level of the lead drops. And another thing that I want to know is I'm going to I want to bring this temperature down. As we learned in the last video, that the PID seemed to indicate this 745 temperature on the setting of 4. So what I'm going to do, so far I'm very satisfied. You hear the pot yourself coming on and off, and it's keeping it within 10 degrees. I'm very surprised by this. This is good information for all of us. So now what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to go ahead and just run a little bit more bullets through here, and then I'm going to turn the pot down a little bit and let it settle, and see if it'll hold again, and I'll bring you back. But ultimately we're going to come all the way down to 4, where the PID controller seemed to like it, and see what the temperature is on this digital readout. Okay, so now I turned it down to 5.5 on the dial, and it seems to be settling right here at 810 degrees. Remember, this PID controller is not controlling the temperature, it's only telling us what the temperature is. And just the dial on the Lee pot sit at 5.5 is kind of holding it around this 810. And again, I'm surprised that this Lee pot is actually doing a lot better job than we have all give it credit for. And this has just never been a test that I have done before, and I'm telling you, I'm just very surprised. At 810 degrees, now I've run a few bullets with it, so it looks like it had dropped about 70 degrees with from 6.5 to 5.5. So now what we'll do is we'll turn it down. I'm going to go ahead and run some more just to verify that this thing is going to stick here. And you hear it coming on here, and then you'll hear it just went back off. Alright, it's back on again. You see the temperature, and it just went back off. So I mean, it is holding pretty well. Now remember, the pot is not plugged into this. Alright, so right now we're exactly at 5.5, and you know, I've run enough bullets to be satisfied that it's going to hold here. Alright, so I know that all of these pots are going to be different, but this is going to serve us very well as a guide. So Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and turn it down to 4.5. Alright. Alright. Now I have it set exactly to the best of my ability between the 4 and the 5 on this dial back here. So now I'm going to run some bullets and drop the sprues in the pot and let it settle down again. I'll bring you back. Alright, so we're getting very interesting results. This number right here is it looks to me like 730 has been the number where I'm holding an average at 4.5 on the Lee pot dial. I've got 730 degrees. Alright, it's where it's been, you heard the pot just now come on and it just went back off. So this pot is going on and off and holding it, you know, really within 5 or 10 degrees here on the temperature gauge. It's on. Hear it? See the temperature rising. And then it just turned back off. See? It's holding it right there in that ballpark, you know, literally within 10 degrees, and I'm being conservative at 4.5. So now we know in the last video when I was controlling the pot with the PID controller, the dial was turned down about to 4 instead of 4.5 to hold it at 745 degrees. So we know that there's going to be little discrepancies there, but it's pretty darn close. Right now the Lee pot is holding it. Well, now what we're going to have to do, and by the way, I'm just below a half a pot right now, and it hasn't seemed to matter whether I had a full pot, and as the level of the pot is dropping, everything seems to stay consistent. This is a surprising test. First time I've done it. You're seeing it right here on YouTube. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the dial down to 4 to see if we can kind of verify. Let's just see what 4 gives us. Is it going to be the same thing, or is the temperature going to drop and then hold? And then I'll bring you back. Okay. One thing that I wanted to do before I let that pot go down in temperature is I wanted to go ahead and verify again with this inside the pot, because I know that some of you are going to ask me, why didn't you put the probe back in the pot to see what the temperature was? So now let's do that. Alright, take that out. Plug that in. Alright, I'm off the bottom about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, this is interesting. Alright, the figure out what all this means. It looks like we're settling on 780 from the 730 mark. So it's about a 50-degree difference is what we're showing now. About a 1/4 inch off the bottom. So about 45 to 50 degree difference from the temperature inside the lead pot versus the temperature underneath the pot where this is mounted. Alright, so there you go for you guys that want to know. Alright, so I just plugged this one back in there and it's showing 750. The reason I wanted to show you that is because the other one just said 780, and I was like, well, wow, that kind of goes right along with what it's always been, 30-degree difference. Yeah, no camera tricks here. I just I plugged it in. I'm waiting for it, and it's settling down at 750, and we just had 780 when we measured inside the pot. So I thought you guys needed to see that. So I'm still showing that 30-degree difference. I wanted you to see that because it was kind of an anomaly compared to what we've been getting as we're testing inside the pot versus the thermocouple underneath the pot. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it down to 4 and see what we get. See where we're going to hold. Well, YouTube, we have learned a whole bunch here. We really have. Who would have known that the Lee melting pot can hold such consistent temperatures? I would have never known if I wouldn't have had this fine PID controller from Johnny's Reloading Bench. This thing is teaching me some stuff and teaching you some stuff, and I can see, don't know of anything specific, but I could see myself learning so much more in the future by having this temperature controller and to see this digital readout of the temperature of our melting pot. As you can hear, the pot keeps coming on and off. Right now I'm at between 1 inch and 3/4 of an inch left of lead in here. I've run a whole pot of lead through this thing, and we're holding around 700 degrees here. Is what it's kind of actually while I was running it, it seemed to be holding around 690. All right, so I went ahead and wrote down 690 because that's been the consistent temperature that it's been holding at. But now that I'm not draining lead and putting sprues in, it's holding at 704. So I'm going to keep it at what I wrote down at 690. So now what we're going to do, we're dead on number 4 on the dial. We're going to, for kicks and giggles, I'm going to turn this thing down to 3.5. But who would have known that the Lee melting pot that we pay maybe $60 or $70 for can be so consistent, even though it don't tell us what the temperature is. If we have a better idea of what these dial settings are, then we can be more confident in how we're running our molds. But even more than that, I think we have a ballpark figure now that we could turn our dials to, you know, whether we're running large bullets or smaller bullets, whether you want your mold hotter or cooler, that we can confidently say that as we're running our mold, for instance, you know, we were running our mold. We started out at 6.5 on the dial here, and we got 875 degrees here. and then we run it at 5.5 here on the dial, and we got 810 degrees here. Now remember, there's a 30-degree discrepancy between the lead that I measure in the pot versus the thermocouple that's on the bottom of the pot. So you can take that into consideration. But say for instance you want to run your pot at 7, when we had this dial set at 4.5 on this dial, the temperature was reading 730. A lot of folks like to run around that temperature to cast their lead. So the nice thing about this that we're learning is we have a ballpark, so it doesn't matter that the temperature stays at 730 on your pot. Your temperature on your pot might be 750, 760, it might be 720. But it doesn't really matter, because the demand for strict temperature control isn't that important. Only that we have an idea of where we're running our molds, that we're not way too high in temperature, or possibly even way too low in temperature, so that our lead freezes up when we add sprues or more lead ingots. So the thing that we've learned here for sure, or at least on this pot, is it holds consistently. This is good news. These pots actually hold consistently. When I had my lead pot failure, we talked about how these pots can run out of control and go so high in temperature. Well, we need that extra power on our dials to get things melting. So that's very nice. If we didn't have that, we would complain that it takes all day to get our lead melted. So what we're learning is, or what I'm learning here for sure, is that the dial can be turned down quite a bit lower than I thought, and probably many of you thought. So now what I'm going to do while we're talking is I'm going to go ahead and turn it to 3.5, and we'll just, for kicks and giggles, see what that temperature settles at before I run any more lead out of here. YouTube, we have learned so much about, who knew that you don't necessarily have to pay $300 or $400 or $500 for a fancy pot that's going to control your temperature, and probably not control it any better than this one will if we knew what temperature it was running to begin with. Just throwing that out there. There's a lot of fine pots out there, but Lee 420 pot, we're paying $60 or $70 for this pot, because we don't have all this fancy stuff to go with it. But isn't it nice to know that these things are consistent? I'm going to leave this right here at 3.5, and I'm going to run a little bit of lead through here and cast a couple more bullets, and then I'll bring you back and we'll just see where 3.5 settles this pot out at. Okay, so I thought you would find it interesting to note that right now my mold is empty, because I just tried to make a pour, and the lead will not come out of the spout. See? Or let me move. See, lead's not coming out. It's soft enough to lift up, but it's not soft enough to pour out of the spout. Notice the temperature is exactly below the melting point of lead of 621. So we're about 22 degrees less. Now, as we've seen in the past, when I checked the pot with the other probe, it's 30 degrees. This is 30 degrees higher. I'm sorry, the lead is 30 degrees higher inside the pot than it is from this. So now you can determine for yourself whether you think the temperature of the lead that I'm measuring on the bottom of pot is more accurate than the temperature of the lead that I'm measuring in the pot. So it looks to me like, you know, if the temperature would have been 30 degrees hotter inside the pot, then I would still have liquid. But I don't. It's not coming out. And I have, you know, 3/4 of an inch of lead in there, which is plenty to run your pot. I usually run it down, you know, 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch maybe. But anyway, it's interesting to note. You guys see it. You can make up your own mind. But I'm feeling pretty good about the temperature that I'm measuring with the PID controller on the bottom of the pot. And one of the reasons I'm talking about this is because there's a lot of folks out there that know a lot about this stuff and is very interested in this stuff. And it'll be interesting to note the setting, the information that I'm getting. The lead's not coming out. If the temperature of the lead was 30 degrees higher than this, it would come out. Now I'm stirring around in the pot, and it's liquid in there, but I guess it's you know, too thick. You know, it seems fine. And just to note, the level of the lead is nearly real close to the element up here, just if anyone's curious. So oh, and the next thing that I forgot to mention is I'd said that I was going to run the pot, I was going to turn it down to 3.5. Well, I did take it down to 3.5, and I went ahead and measured. It was I should have told you this. The camera's going on and off. It's hard for you guys to keep up if you don't know what I'm doing. So I turned it to 3.5. I let it settle down, and it was 650 degrees on this digital readout. I didn't turn the camera back on. I went ahead and turned it down to 3, and that's where it's at right now. It's actually at 3. This is set on the dial exactly on numero 3, 606 right here. So I don't guess there's any sense in turning it down any lower. We're already below the melting point. Now, like I pointed out, you know, the lead inside the pot is definitely liquid, and I mean, it's definitely liquid. It don't seem real sludgy. It don't seem real sludgy, but it's obviously there's not enough heat to heat the spout up enough for the lead to fall out. That's what I'm determining here. So I'm gonna go ahead and write that down at on the dial on the setting 3. We're getting, I'm just going to put 605 degrees. Alright. So, this pretty much concludes, this is what I've got. See if that'll focus at all. This is pretty much what I got, is the Lee pot dial and degrees in Fahrenheit. 6.5 was 875 degrees. 5.5 on the dial was 810 degrees, and 4.5 on the dial was 730 degrees, and 4 on the dial was 690 degrees. 3.5 on the dial was 650 degrees, and 3 on the dial is 605 degrees. So this is information that we can use. So YouTube, I hope you found this useful. You know, I mean, this is a treasure trove of information for me personally, especially if I didn't have this PID controller, to know that I'm on a setting of 3, and at 3 on 3.5 I can actually cast bullets. YouTube, I hope you found this informative, and I'll see you in the next video.